So glad you're here. All right. Oh, gotta press this back a bit. All right, hello, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be talking about how to find like our resilience within relationships when we've been rejected, when we've been hurt, when we've been any of these things in a relationship. And I'm going to be talking in the context of like how to like feel worthy of love and feel worthy of connection, and how to feel like to have that self-esteem again when we've been rejected, and when someone has said like I don't love you, or I don't want to be with you, or I don't want to be your friend, or something more kind of covert than that, like where you've just been bullied a lot and your self-esteem has been eroded by somebody. And so it's that context, the context of like how do we find self-love again, how do we find our own sense of self-love, even maybe for the first time, when we've had people who outright rejected us and didn't like us, and gave us their reasons for why they didn't like us, and like I say, it can be that they literally told us these things, that we were actually rejected in some overt way, like I'm breaking up with you, I don't want to be with you, I don't want to be your friend. Or it can be more subtle things, right? Like you were just constantly told like I hate this about you, or this is annoying about you, or you weren't invited to things or whatever. And I'm gonna, again, sort of like the video I did last week, talk just a lot from my personal experience, because I think with things like this, again, like I'm not a trained therapist, and also for everybody watching this, right, like I'm not able to work one-on-one with you with what you were specifically rejected for and your specific circumstance. So to understand that, right, like I can't, through this parasocial thing, fully know you and fully know your experience and give you specific advice for what to do in your specific situation, because I don't know what your specific situation is. I am going to speak from my experience with myself and what I've seen with other people, and then again, I encourage you to take what feels right for you, to relate to what you relate to try on the tools that you think will work for you, but to understand that if something doesn't work for you, or if something doesn't feel right to you, or if you can't relate to something or whatever, that's great and that's fine. And there are lots of other ways of finding self-esteem after being rejected than the ones I'm going to talk about. And yeah, that this is me coming from my personal experience of just having been rejected a lot and having my self-esteem eroded a lot, and having that be how I saw myself from childhood forward, because for me the rejection in relationships was essentially like my single experience with relationships. And so how I have found self-esteem, even though I was basically trained from day one that like I wasn't good. So that's where I'm going to be talking from. Hopefully you can find some things that you relate to in this, and then some tools to actually help you feel better about yourself if you don't feel good about yourself right now. So that, yeah, I want to start with my credentials on this is basically having been someone who was deeply rejected in all of my relationships for all of my life. I've talked a lot about my experience being in school and with peers. So like with people my age and people who I was supposed to have friendships with, basically from day one, I didn't fit in. I wasn't normal. I was incredibly sensitive. I was incredibly, now understanding, autistic and undiagnosed in every way. And so I was just, and for some reason, just the girls that I was around, specifically in my generation, in the year I was born, in the place I was born, the girls were all just very, very competitive. Like it like looking back, like in my elementary school days, like girls were like high school level catty and mean to each other. And I just couldn't compete. I couldn't keep up. I was constantly, like multiple times told, like, you can't be our friend anymore. We don't want to hang out with you. Like, getting notes in my locker of like, you can't be friends with us, we don't like you. And just like this constant sense of like not knowing if I was going to have friends from day to day. And that was basically my lived experience all through school. From elementary school all the way through high school, I had like a group of friends that were my group of friends, but again, it was kind of like literally day to day. I didn't know if I was going to be able to hang out with them at lunch. I didn't know if they were going to include me. I didn't know if today was going to be a day where they didn't want to hang out with me. And from the very beginning of my life, there was always kind of a sense of like, people who were hanging out with me were like doing me a favor. And it was like some sort of charity case to like hang out with me. And obviously, right, I talk about it now like that's, but it was absolutely soul crushing as a child. And for me growing, like I came home from school crying pretty much every single day, and I went to school crying pretty much every single day, because it was just so hard to never know if I was going to have friends, if I was going to be kicked out that day, if I was going to be told that I was whatever it was. Like everything from you're too sensitive, you're too intense, you're too whatever you are. Like, I don't know. I just kind of feel like at some point I got rejected for pretty well every aspect of my personality. And the times that I was included were usually the times when I was counseling somebody or helping somebody with something, or we were doing some sort of activity where I didn't stick out like a sore thumb, so something like dancing or whatever. But yeah, like I was just, again, like looking back, just very autistic and intense, and took everything literally, and I was also odd in that I just like really, really cared about people's feelings, and therefore I was not able to stand up for myself. I wasn't able to be kind of like aggressive back when people were aggressive with me. And I think, again, there was just something about the children in my grade that like everyone was just very aggressive, and bullying was just a huge thing. And yeah, I was never included in anything. And then to take that, and I would go home and tell my mom that like kids were being mean to me, and I didn't, and like, again, like this was all mixed up with me being able to tell that my friends were going through things, and that they were sad, and that they were hurting, and that there was like all this turmoil in their lives that I couldn't do anything about. And I just felt so bad. Like I wanted to help them. I wanted to make it better. I wanted to be there for them. And I also wanted them to like me, and I wanted them to love me. And like, I couldn't figure out how to make any of those things happen. And then I would go home and tell my mom, and she would be like, well, like, you're a weirdo. You're a freak. Like, this is your fault. You need to stop being so weird. You need to stop being so different. You need to fit in. You have to stop being so weird. And also, you're burdening me with this. You need to stop being so emotional. You need to stop being so needy. Like, you need to get stronger, and you need to just stop being so sensitive and stop being like this. And so, again, like, I just didn't have a place where I went where someone was like, it's okay that you are the way that you are. Like, I was just constantly on edge and under tension, feeling bad for how I was, and feeling bad for everybody else, and trying to fit in, and trying to be what people wanted me to be, and failing at it constantly, and being told I was failing at it constantly. And there was just kind of like no break from that. So that was my experience with relationships. So literally by the time I got to the end of high school, like, I was so burnt out on all of it that I had kind of just given up. I graduated 6 months early, like I said, and I just feel like that last 6 months of school, I wasn't really even there. Like, I just kind of like floated through. I knew I was leaving, and I just like kind of gave up on trying to be connected to everyone, because like it gets to the point where you're never invited to anything, you're never included, you're not part of it, that you just kind of give up, right? Like I think that's just kind of what happened to me. I just gave up. And then I was set to go to Bible school in New Zealand right after I graduated. So I graduated in January, and then February 3rd or something like this, I got an airplane to go to Bible school in New Zealand. And I really thought, I'm going to find my people there, right? I'm going to find my sensitive people who like want to help the world and who are like Christian and who want to like do something and who really want like care about each other, and like we want to like be real friends, and like all this, like I had all these like high hopes in my head that it was going to be this like magical, I was going to find people like me who were, like I said, like sensitive and real and wanted to have like real conversations, because that was always my thing too. Like I just had no capacity to do superficial anything. And so if you were going to talk to me, you were going to talk to me about like what was going on in your house and like what you were feeling and what was going on with you. And I just, right now looking back, like what teenager wants to do that? Like that's just like not cool. and even what adult wants to do that? Like it's very, like I say, like I've learned a lot of things growing up about how my way of socializing is just not normal and not attractive to most people, and that makes sense. So like I say, like I got to New Zealand and then all my dreams were crashed on that. Like everyone was just, again, normal teenage people who were upset about boys and things that I just like couldn't relate to. And that being the other thing too, like being chronically ill and also just like really religious. Like I didn't smoke, I didn't drink, I didn't party. Like there was just like nothing I could connect with people on most of the time. So long story short, I've lived my entire life being rejected and being different, because that was the other thing too, right? Like now understanding that I have like chronic illness and just not being able to have like a body like everybody else. Like I couldn't, like I got sick all the time and I couldn't do what everyone else did, and I couldn't feel what everyone else was feeling. Like when people felt good eating food, and people felt good smoking drugs, and people felt good having sex and all of these things, like it was just all so not translating to that to me because of the way my body is set up and because of autism and because of whatever. So I just like couldn't connect and I couldn't relate, and it just led to a lot of rejection. And it led to a lot of like, we don't like you because of this, and we don't like you because of that, and you're being rejected because of this, and if you could just stop being so weird. So like, of course, I grew up with a self-image that I was just shitty, and that everything about me was wrong and bad and unacceptable. And then kind of also dealing with the fact that on top of all of that, like I just had no capacity to try to be different, to try to fit in. Like I know like a lot of autistic people talk about masking and being able to like pretend something, and I just couldn't. And I'm not saying that as anything good or bad or right or wrong. It's just like I couldn't pretend. I was weird, and I couldn't ever act normal, even when it would have served me so much better to just not say the thing, or just, I knew what normal was. I had observed it. I knew what people were doing, but like I had no capacity to actually do that. And again, I was projecting myself onto everyone else and assuming like it must be as horrible for everyone else to be pretending that everything's fine and laughing and joking and doing all these things, when really everyone's hurting inside and everything's hard and we're all having issues we're not looking at and all these things. And I was just assuming that everyone else was feeling how I was feeling, that they were feeling the anxiety and the depression and the everything is terrible and no one's dealing with their shit and they're all just acting fine, and I just like couldn't act fine, when in real reality, like now as an adult, I understand, like people aren't feeling the things that I'm feeling. They're not seeing the things that I'm seeing. They actually are enjoying the things that they're doing. And so again, right, just I was never able to fit in. And like I said, that really gave me a complex that everything about my personality was wrong and everything about the way that I was wrong, and there was no good part of me. And I also want to add this in here because I feel like this is important. I was also aware that while and I just want to say this too, right? Like, a lot of sensitive people and a lot of people like me paint this picture that, like, we are these sensitive, loving, empathic beings and everyone's just rejecting us and we're the good guys and they're the bad guys. And I want to make it clear that part of what was so difficult for me to find self-love was because I was aware that I'm a human who can be shitty too. Okay? And I know that there is a lot of, like I say, like, rhetoric out there that if you're rejected and if you're different and if you're all these things, it's because you're this, like, empathic, beautiful, perfect being and people just can't relate to you and it's their fault and everyone's just insensitive and conditioned and all these things. And to a degree that's true. Like, to a degree, our world is not set up for real connection. Our world is not set up for genuine connection. Like, it's just we are constantly bred in our culture to defer to the superficial, to defer to how it looks, to seek connection based on superficial things, to never show our vulnerability, to never show our emotions, to never show what's really going on with us. And then this leads to a situation where everyone is pretending and being accepted for their being pretending, but then we're so caught up in our own heads about, am I doing the right things and are people liking me? And so we're never actually connecting on anything real. Like, we're not actually, like, my real personality and your real personality connecting. It's, I'm being who I think you want me to be so that you'll approve of me. You're being who you think I want you to be so that you'll approve of me. And we're all just worrying about if we're being approved of or not. And because we all feel so insecure and everything is so weird and, like, all of this stuff, like, that is absolutely true. And like I said, I was like, but if there are, like, genuinely toxic things that I am doing and toxic traits that I have, I also want to know that. Like, I know that not everything that is being rejected in me is because people just don't understand my light. Like, I knew even back then that, like, I'm sure there are things that are, like, actually toxic about my behavior and toxic about the way that I'm doing things. So, like, the kind of advice to just, like, love yourself and fuck everyone else, I never accepted that because I didn't want to fuck everyone else. Like, I wanted to know if I was doing something harmful, and I wanted to know if my behavior was really the problem. And so this is why I think this needs to be a much more nuanced conversation than just, if you're being rejected, like, fuck everyone else, they're wrong and you're amazing. And it needs to be more nuanced than just, if you're being rejected, fix that about yourself. We need to have a much more nuanced perspective that just because we're sensitive and nice and caring and empathic beings doesn't mean that we're perfect and that everything that we do is great and that we're being rejected for no other reason than everyone else just can't handle it. Because I don't think that that's reality, and I think that we have to have enough self-love that we can identify our own shitty behavior and how we were raised to cope the ways that we cope and how we're manipulative and how we're doing these things, because that's a part of finding confidence in relationships, is being able to be self-aware of where your way of being is the problem. Because, like I say, I know that in the spirituality world especially, there's always this message of, like, if you're being rejected and if you're sensitive and empathic and whatever, it's always the other person. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, especially if we've been rejected a lot, if we've been hurt a lot, if we have trauma and pain. There are going to be things that we do and that we are that are also toxic. And being able to love ourselves enough to see that and to admit that and to grow in that is really important, right? That we don't look anymore as anyone being superior or like good guys versus bad guys. And so like this is kind of the first tool or tip that I would give, that when we've been rejected a lot and when we've been told that who and what we are is not good, and when we have been, like I say, like cast aside so much that we feel like there is nothing good about us and we feel like there is no redeeming quality to us and that everything about us sucks and all that stuff, the first phase is always going to be that we do need to learn how to love who we are. And so like this, again, I'm not a therapist and I'm not in anyone else's personal experience. I'm just going to say what worked for me and what I did to build self-esteem. Because for me, there just wasn't a lot in my life that was there to support my self-esteem, right? Being so different, being non-able-bodied, being neuroatypical, being hyper spiritual, being hyper needing to know the meaning and reason for everything, being very, 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 very sensitive to what's going on with people and wanting to know what's going on with people, and not being able to be superficial in any way, and like not being able to care about a lot of the things that people care about, and just being fundamentally different. I did need to go through a phase where I accepted that I might not be accepted ever. And that, I think, was the first step towards being able to ever find true connection, was kind of letting go of hope that I was ever going to find it. And that can sound a little bit contradictory. And it wasn't giving up on it in like a self-defeating way. It was like I say, I kind of got to the point where I realized that I had been trying to fix myself and make myself acceptable and do what I needed to do to try to fit in for my entire life. And I had failed at it for my entire life. And that I was no closer to being popular or having friends or connections the way that I wanted to when I was 24 than I was when I was 14. And coming to that realization that I was going to have to live with myself for the rest of my life. That everyone else in my life was going to come and go. That no one else was going to be a permanent fixture in my reality other than myself. And realizing that I could sit there and spend the rest of my life rejecting myself to try to find connection with others. Because that was like my definition of how I was going to find connection with others. It was so ingrained in my mind and ingrained in my being that who and what I was naturally was always going to be rejected and was always going to be cut off from love by other people. I would even say that like the one kind of like unconditionally loving relationship I had was with my grandpa. And he just, I don't know, thought I was great and thought I was special always from the beginning of my life till my teenage years. And he was like my one example of someone that just always loved me and always liked me and thought I was great. And so I had a little experience of like love, of someone loving me. Because again, like I didn't even really get that from my parents. Like I was not safe anywhere to be myself other than with my grandpa. And I got to a point where, again, in my teenage years, where I was realizing that I had some control over my health and that I could change the way that I was feeling with my diet and all these things. So I started to get into veganism, and I started getting into raw foods, and I started getting into working out and all these things. And for some reason, that was just like too far for my grandpa. And he just like, he didn't recognize the person I had become. Beings like, and it's kind of like this thing that happened. I went through a period of time when I was 14 where I was really, really, really depressed, and I just kind of sat on the couch and I was sick, and I just feel like I kind of like got to a point where I realized that no one was coming for me, and that no one was going to help me, and that I was going to have to do this by myself. If I was going to get myself out, I was going to have to just become strong, and I was going to have to become self-sufficient, and I couldn't be so sensitive, and I couldn't be so needy. And like I said, like I just got to this point where I was like, I have to be strong. Like I can't be so weak. And that was another big part of, I had just really seen myself as super weak. And so I became strong. Like I just like hardened a lot, and I became uncompromising in how I was going to do things, because I was like, I have to save myself. And I think my grandpa just like did not recognize this person. Like I had always just been this very loving, soft-hearted, emotional, like Aquarius to the extent, like to the nth kind of person. And then I just turned hard, and he was like, I don't know who this is, and he rejected me. And then I think that was just kind of like the one of the nails in the coffin, that I'm just like, right, like no one is ever going to love me, because in order to survive I have to be hard, like I have to be strong, I have to do these things. And if the one person who loves me doesn't love me because of what I have to do to survive, like it just felt like, okay, that's it, like that's it, I'm never going to be loved. And so that, yeah, like I say, I just kind of got to this point where I was like, my only option is to love myself, because I can't be what people want me to be. I can't do it. I've been trying so hard. I just really got to a point where it was like, I'm still alive, and I'm going to be alive for as long as I'm alive. And if I'm hating myself and everyone else is hating me, and I'm not getting any closer to anyone loving me by hating myself, this is going to be a miserable existence for the rest of my life. So, like I said, for me, I just got to a place where I was like, my only option is to learn to love myself, because I can't stay being in this constant inner battle with myself. And I think that a lot of us can resonate with that. Like there's just, in our world, I feel like we are set up to be in a constant state of battle with ourselves, to be in a constant state of just feeling insecure, and like we're not good enough, and we're not who we should be. And whether we're being accepted or rejected by the outside world, a lot of the time it doesn't even matter, because the outside acceptance is always fleeting. Like, and I think that I came to that realization too, that like no matter what I did to get to a place where people accepted me, it always felt like that acceptance was just here today, gone tomorrow. And no matter, it was just so impermanent. And people's capacity to love other people is imperfect. And so like, again, like I was searching for this perfect love and searching for this unconditional love. And I think I, again, sort of realized a truth about reality, in that like we are never going to find that with another human. No human is ever going to be able to unconditionally love us the way we want to be unconditionally loved. And it's not even it's not because of a flaw in them, and it's not because of a flaw in us, it's not because of a flaw in anything. It's just, we are fallible humans who don't have the capacity for unconditional love at this point. We don't have the capacity for always seeing somebody in their light, and always being there for them, and always being able to be on their side, and always being able to be supportive. And we love each other, and we can like each other, and we do our best for each other. And even in relationships where both people are genuinely showing up to be genuinely connected, there are going to be days and times and weeks and months where that connection just isn't there, or people just are going through their own shit and they can't be there for you, or they can't resonate with you for some reason or whatever. And like, right, and it was just kind of like realizing that that perfect love that I wanted did not exist outside of myself. And like I said, realizing that it wasn't even a flaw in people. It wasn't a flaw in me. It was just human nature. We are never going to find perfect love or perfect safety from anyone or anything else. And seeing that and not letting that be like a depressive, this is horrible thing. I decided that again, I was just going to be my own safe place because I was the only one I had control over. And I think that again, that was like my biggest revelation, that it's like me constantly trying to be something or do something to like manipulate other people into loving me, or me trying to be what they wanted me to be. I was realizing that, like, number one, that isn't me genuinely caring about them. That was me, like, this is me starting to recognize my own toxicity, right? That, like, if all I'm ever doing is like trying to get people to love me, and I'm like being nice to them and like caring for them and empathing them and being codependent with them because I'm hoping that they will love me back, that's not real love from me. That's conditional love and acceptance that I'm giving from a place of deficiency, and that didn't feel good. Like, I didn't like feeling like I was the kind of person who was only loving people because I wanted them to love me back, or that I was being what they wanted me to be so that they would love me. And that just really felt manipulative to me. And that felt, and like, again, right, like understanding, like, I wasn't trying to be manipulative. I wasn't like, how am I going to manipulate these people, right? Like, it was how I was raised. You do what you need to do so that people will like you. And it was how I was raised, that how all of us are raised, like, that we need people, we want connection, we want love, and we will do whatever it takes to get that love and to get that connection and to get that people loving us. And then understanding, right, the childhood program of the way you get love is that you fit in and you be what people want you to be and you do what they want you to do. And then we all have our version of that, whether that's being super empathic and codependent, or that's being super independent and going after jobs that you don't, and status and money and all of, like, we're all kind of chasing this, like, who do I have to be so that people will finally love me. And like I said, I just got to a point where I was like, this isn't good for anybody. This isn't good for me. This isn't good for the people I'm in relationship with because I'm not really caring about them. Like, it's just, this isn't gonna work. And then again, realizing that even if I got that love and I got that approval and I got that acceptance, I knew I couldn't keep up with it. Like, I couldn't keep pretending forever. If I wasn't being loved for who I really was, keeping up the act was going to be hard. Like, that didn't feel good either. So I just got to a place where I was like, okay, as hard as this is, I'm going to learn to like myself, because I have to be with myself all the time, number one. And number two, I want to be able to, like, genuinely care about other people and be there for other people in a way that's, like, not attached to getting my own needs met. Like, I wanted to be able to, and this was part of how I learned to say no, and how to not overgive and not get into a place of, like, being resentful because I was overextending myself and all of these things. Like, how I learned to be less codependent was through saying, okay, if I actually, like, am taking care of myself and loving myself, and I'm not doing this for their approval, and I'm not doing this because I need something in return, what is actually the best thing for both of us? And so learning that me overextending myself and me doing things in a way to get love in return wasn't actually good for the people I was trying to love either. It was only leading to all of us not being healthy. And so, like I say, I know that this sounds like, great, love yourself. That's like fucking shitty advice. If I could love myself, I would love myself, and like I wouldn't be listening to this. And I say, I get it, right? But I do think that at some point a decision does need to be made. Like, what I mean by that is this. I got to a place where it was like I didn't have evidence that I was good. And I had been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for someone to show up to tell me it was okay for me to love myself. And it was okay for me to start to do the work to love myself. And I had that fear in the back of my head, like a lot of us do, that if I love myself, I'm going to turn into a shitty person. Because I'm gonna make it okay that I do shitty things, and I'm gonna make it okay that I'm right. I'm gonna turn into one of those like narcissistic people who just think everything about myself is perfect, and everything about everyone, like all my problems are everyone else's fault. And I don't want to be that, and I don't want to be hurting people and not knowing that I'm hurting people. I don't want to be making excuses, because I had a lot of people in my life who were like that, where they like demonstrated self-love to the point where they were shitty to other people and made excuses for it. And I didn't want to be like that. I was so afraid that if I loved myself, number one, that would mean the end of anyone else ever loving me, because no one had ever given me any evidence that who I actually was lovable. And number two, I was so afraid that it would turn me into a shitty narcissistic person who just shit all over everyone else and didn't care because I loved myself. And those were my two big resistance factors. And so, like I said, for me, it just came down to this point of like, and as scary as this is, I said to myself, right, if I'm going to live the rest of my life hating everything about myself because everyone's told me I should hate everything about myself, it's going to be miserable. And even though I hate myself and even though I've done all of these things, it still hasn't led to the connection that I'm wanting anyways. It's never brought me closer to what I wanted. And even if I was accepted for a little while and there was those little hits of greatness and everything being fine, it always, the mask would slip. Like my real personality was gonna come out and it was going to be rejected. So I was like, this doesn't work. And like I said, and I don't want to be the kind of person that's loving other people to get love back. So I just said, fine, right? If it means I'm a shitty person for the rest of my life, or if it means I'm all alone for the rest of my life, I'm already alone. People already don't like me. I already don't have friends. I'm not actually losing anything there. And number two, right, if I turn shitty, then just everyone will leave and then I'll just be alone. So that was kind of like, I just had to make the decision that I was going to learn to like the parts of myself that I had been trained I was not allowed to like. And I was just going to do the work inside, and I wasn't going to wait for someone to give me permission to do it. Because I think a lot of the time, that's what's happening. We're waiting for someone to come to us and say, it's okay for you to love yourself. Even though all of these people have rejected you, and even though you have been through all of these horrible things of people telling you these parts of you are bad, and you're not good enough, and you are rejected for this and that reason, we're waiting for someone to say, it's okay. You can love yourself. You're not horrible. You're not going to be alone forever. I promise if you like yourself, you'll still find other people and all of these things. And like I said, I just got to a point where I realized that wasn't coming. That was never going to happen. No one was going to come and tell me that and there was no guarantee that I wasn't going to be alone forever. And so I think I just kind of stopped running and turned around and faced that fear and said, just for myself. So this is the other thing that I want to say is like, you don't have to feel the way that I felt, and you don't have to do the things that I did. What I am saying here isn't the right way and isn't the right thing. This is just what I did. I said, fine, if I'm going to be alone forever, I'm going to be alone forever. And I'm going to stop fighting with that reality and I'm going to learn to like myself and be nice to myself, because maybe no one is ever going to love me. And that was a very real possibility in my mind, because up till that point, no one really had loved me except for my sister. But again, right, like my brain didn't really even register that, because the overwhelming consensus was you're shitty. So sometimes we have to get to a point where we stare that fear of being alone forever in the face, and we stop running from it, and we say, okay, maybe I'll be alone forever. Maybe no one will ever love me the way that I want to be loved, or for who I really am, or whatever. But at the end of the day, I still have to live with myself every single day. I still have to be with myself every single day. I am forced to be with these thoughts 24/7. Everyone else is transient. Even the people that we're like married to or connected with romantically, or our family or whatever, like they're there all the time. Still, they go to bed at night and you go to bed at night, and you're different. And the bigger thing about it was that understanding that loving myself and accepting myself was a huge part of me being able to figure out a life that worked for me. Like I started to again realize that so much of my wanting to be loved and accepted was me trying to find the right way to live and the right things to do, so that I would be safe, and so that I would be taken care of, and so that I would have my needs met. Because again, that childhood indoctrination that getting your needs met and being safe and being out of pain and in pleasure is a result of people loving you, empathing your needs, and providing for you, right? So like, again, like a lot of us are like, but to accept that I'm going to be alone forever, that just means I'm going to die. I'm going to be miserable. I'm never going to get my needs met, because that's the point of relationships. Like, we're here to like, right? If I'm alone and rejected forever, who's going to pay my paycheck and all of these things? And kind of starting to come into an adult perspective that isn't reality. That we can live a pretty okay life getting our needs met and still having a job and still having money, even when we're not particularly liked by other people, and even when we're not popular, and even when we don't fit in. There are ways of being, and there are ways of living in this world where we can still be okay, and more than okay, when we figure out kind of the ways of life that work for us, and we start to work our way to that. You see what I'm saying? By letting go of needing to be loved and approved of, and gearing my life towards that, I started again to recognize and realize all the places I was rejecting my authentic self, and what I actually wanted, and what I actually needed, and what actually worked for me, in the hopes that if I did that enough, I would fit in, and then people would like me, and then they would meet my needs. So in the process of saying, I'm going to love and accept myself for who and what I am, I started to say, okay, so these traits about me, that I get overwhelmed with stimulation easy. So I'm just not going to try to force myself to be outdoors and like at music festivals or whatever, hoping that I'll find friends. I'm going to realize that like I can't handle that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to realize that my body has these certain needs, and there are things that I have to do on a daily basis to make myself healthy, and people aren't going to understand that, and they're not going to. And I realize, right, I don't need to blast it all over social media. I don't need to tell anybody. I don't need to justify it. I just need to do it myself and live it for myself and see that it makes me feel better, and that's good enough. And so another thing that I will say in this learning to love myself, I went through a long period of time where I didn't have a lot of connection with other people. And I think that this is another thing that a lot of us are really afraid of, is that we are afraid to go through a period of relative isolation. And we are afraid to face having to be alone with ourselves because our world has not taught us how to do that. And that is one of the scariest things that we can do. And just that instinct that if I'm alone, I'm going to be alone and I'm not going to get my needs met and I can't do this. I just want to say that part of what has allowed me to have satisfying relationships now is the fact that I allowed myself to be alone. That I allowed myself, yeah, so someone says, I'm not afraid of isolation, I'm afraid I've come to enjoy it too much. And this is what I'm saying, it's like, when we face this fear of isolation and we face this fear of people not getting us and we face this fear of like, what if I'm the only one who's ever going to love me? So much of the time, it is just not as bad as we thought it was going to be. And finding that capacity to be with ourselves and to be alone with ourselves and to be comfortable with ourselves often requires that we have to go alone for a little while. That we have to be isolated for a little while, that we don't jump into the next relationship and keep looking for that validation and that outside approval and that people telling us that we're good. I understand that, like, especially we're in a cultural moment right now of realizing that community and connection and all of these things are important, and trying to be hyper individualistic and do it all on our own is like, that's part of the problem. And I agree. We do need more connection. We do need more authentic, real connection. But what I'm saying is that I feel like the way we're going to get that is through more people learning first to be okay with themselves. Because how do we show up to a relationship authentically? Like really being able to say what we feel and say what we think. And like I say, being able to actually connect with somebody else, because you're not sitting there worrying about what they think about you. You're not sitting there worrying about if you're doing what make them approve of you or if you're living up to standard or whatever. Like, you're able to actually show up and see somebody, because the whole point of the relationship isn't for you to be acknowledged and validated. How are we going to have these authentic relationships and this authentic community that we want so badly if all of us are still hating ourselves so much? And if all of us are still looking to everyone else for how we should live and what the right thing to do is? This community that we want is still not possible from this state of complete insecurity. And I can't be myself, and I'm constantly looking to the outside world to tell me who and what I should be. And again, bigger than that, when we're disconnected from how we feel and what we want and what actually works for us, we are easily manipulated into being sold things we don't need, into being told like, you need to be beautiful, you need to be young, you need all these things, and being told that consumerism and capitalism and finding your passion and work and all these things is the way to happiness. Or being told that, like, right, if you just have the right outfit and the right job and the right partner and all these things, you'll be loved and forever. And we're not seeing that that's coming from a state of like such insecurity inside that we feel our vulnerability as human beings and we don't know how to address that in a real way. And we also feel constantly like we're not finding the connection we want because there's something wrong with me. When in real reality, we need to be able to face our existential crises. We're all going to age. We're all vulnerable. We all are human in the sense that, like, we're not perfect and we fuck up and we have things in our relationships that aren't perfect and things in our bodies that aren't perfect. And this cultural, you need to present yourself as capable and awesome and perfect all the time, or you need to like categorize yourself as like chronically ill or like you need to like have a label so that we can like put you in a box. That's how our culture operates right now. And it's gonna take people getting to a point of like, fuck that. I'm gonna accept the the depth and the breadth of my entire being. I'm going to learn to love myself for who I am and what I am all the time. Like when I'm all put together and I have answers and I'm there to be connected, that's great. When I'm a total mess and things in my life are shit and I don't know what I'm doing and life is hard and scary, I'm going to learn to like that too. I'm going to learn to like the parts of myself that other people don't like. And I'm going to learn to have enough self-esteem that I can recognize when my traits are toxic. Because I feel like, again, this is a huge part of true self-love, is when you can recognize sometimes it is me being shitty. And then you can see that it's like you're not choosing to be shitty. You're not trying to be shitty. You're hurting. You're scared. This is what you learned. You're perceiving things that seem totally real to you based on your trauma or your upbringing or whatever you've been through that aren't real, that are making you say and do things that aren't like, right? Like even realizing like I'm super empathic, but I'm using that as like a weird manipulation tool to get people to like me. And that's like not cool. And so like I say, we want to get to a point where we say, I'm going to love myself anyways, because number one, no one is ever going to love me perfectly. It's never going to happen. In order to be someone who feels safe in relationships and can be open and vulnerable to get the kind of connection we want, we have to feel enough security inside that if we get rejected and if someone leaves us and if someone doesn't like us, we're not going to be broken. Because a lot of us feel that way, right? We feel so scared that if I get rejected, that's it. I have to hate myself. I have to reject myself. I'll never be loved again. And if I lose people, I'm alone. And this is why I talk about self-love so much. It's like developing that sense of like when you're with you, you don't feel like you're alone. You don't feel like you're with someone who hates you. You don't feel like there is no love except for external love. It's so important for developing real connection. And again, I'm not saying the trope of like, if you don't fully love yourself, you can never love anyone else or feel the love of someone else. This isn't true. Again, there is so much benefit in being loved by somebody else. There is so much benefit in being connected to other people. And I am not trying to say self-love over that. I'm not saying one versus the other. I'm saying both are important. And then we have to validate and recognize when we're in a state where authentic love just isn't available right now from someone else. So that means we're in a phase where it's an opportunity to learn to love ourselves. When we have been rejected by someone else, it's an opportunity to say, okay, where can I learn to love myself where they couldn't love me? And second thing, where can I look at some of the behaviors and like, where was it me? Where was it my toxicity? And how can I work on that stuff with compassion and understanding for where it came from and how I was just trying to protect myself and how I was just trying to do all these things, right? Like we start to be able to look at ourselves objectively as we're not good or bad. We're just people who learned behavior patterns. And if they aren't working, we need understanding and softness and grace and acceptance so that we can slowly create new patterns that make it so that our relationships are a little bit better and that we're a little less needy or manipulative or we can be more available for actually them and all of these things. That, like I say, this true self-love means that we can understand when someone rejected us for a thing that they just didn't like or they couldn't understand, or maybe it was too much for somebody, or maybe it wasn't their cup of tea. And we don't have to make them the enemy, and we don't have to make ourselves the enemy. We can just get to a point where it's like, okay, we're different. And some people aren't going to like who I am. And it doesn't mean that they're toxic, and it doesn't mean that I'm toxic. It just means we're people who are different. Because, like, right, I get it now at this point. Like, my way of being is not for most people. Okay, so I'm telling you, right, like I grew up being very bullied. No one really liked me. I went through a long period of isolation, and now I have very few relationships because I understand that who and what I am as an intense person, it's just not ever going to be something that a lot of people want to be around all the time. This is another thing. Like, my husband has one of those personalities that everyone wants to be around him all the time. And that's naturally who he is. Like, people always ask me, like, or, you know, like on the internet, they tell you, like, what Disney princess are you? Like, what Disney princess do you identify as? And I identify as Quasimodo. Like, literally, I don't fit into the world, and I am under no illusion at this point that I am ever going to fit in. But I'm married to, like, literal Mr. Congeniality. Like, he just naturally is that kind of person. And so understanding that is true, right? There are some personalities and some people that it's not even them being inauthentic or them whatever. They're just likable. And then there are some people like me who are not. And it's not a flaw. It's not something wrong with me. It's not something I'm trying to be like him. We're just different. And the world is filled with all kinds of people. And some of us are designed to be extroverted and to have lots of friends and for things to be kind of superficial. And that's how we connect, and that's fine. And then there are people like me and my sister who just have no capacity for that. and we're never going to fit into that crowd. And like I say, just developing this, it's okay. Right? That we have to sometimes grieve the loss of the life that we're never going to have because of the personalities that we have, right? Like, I am never going to be Marcus, and I'm never going to have his experience of going to a music festival and meeting 15 new friends, and it's like the fucking best thing ever, right? Like, that, I'm never going to be that kind of person. And I hated that about myself for so long until I just got to a point of, like, it's okay. This is who I am. This is what I am. And then how can I start to build a life around who I am? And then, right, they say, and then you're going to attract your tribe. And I don't know if that's true or not, because I haven't, like, attracted a huge group of people who are all, like, interested in being my best friend. I have learned to like myself, and I've learned to be very much okay in my own presence. And I have a couple of relationships that are really deep and really intense, and that's about it. And that's fine, right? And like I say, accepting my lot in life, that this is just who I am because of my body and my emotions and all of these things. And like I said, grieving the loss of that popular miscongeniality that I wanted to be, that I'm never going to be, and saying, okay. So my tips, what are my tips? Number one, you have to be with you. And as scary as it is, sometimes we need to accept that in loving ourselves, we might not have the connections we want with other people. But we have to understand that we are the only ones we are ever going to be with forever. And if we can't have an internal sense of self and an internal sense of self-love and an internal sense of safety, that we're always going to be miserable, no matter if people are loving us or not. And no one is going to give you permission to love yourself. You're going to have to do it yourself. Because I can sit here and say, I give you permission. Love yourself. Do it. You are worthy of it. Even if no one else ever loves you ever again, you are worthy of being loved by yourself. And like I was talking about in my last video, by God, by the universe, by a higher power that you feel is connected to you, working on that connection with yourself and with something that created you or whatever it is that you believe that makes you feel like there's something out there loving you, develop it. And it's hard and it's uncomfortable and there's no easy way. And I'm going to say that. Like, how do I do it? You work on it every day. You work on that voice that tells you this is bad about me, this is wrong about me. You say no. Compassion, curiosity. What does this part of me need? What does this part of me want? How can I support myself instead of trying to fix myself? And that being your new mantra. And you have to practice it every day. There's no easy. There's no trick. I've given you all the tricks I can give you. You just have to work on it. And it's gonna be hard and it's gonna be uncomfortable. And that's part of why I think self-love, real self-love, doesn't fit into our market economy, because it's not flashy and it's not glamorous and it's just the same shit every day. You showing up for the you that actually exists right here, right now, and saying, okay, what do I need? How can I show up for myself? And then slowly you start to create a life that works for you. And this will build your self-esteem so that you can start to recognize where some of your traits are toxic traits. And sometimes it is you that's messing up the relationship. And you don't go into blame and you don't go into shame and you don't hate yourself. You say, okay, where did that come from? How did I develop that? How can I support that part of myself in growth, in maturation, so I can show up differently? And then it makes it so that you can show up for relationships more authentically, because you're not there to get love and validation and approval. You have that. So you can actually connect with the people you're trying to connect to. Right? So this process of, you just have to do the hard work. And again, I'm not saying you have to. No one has to. I'm saying this is what I did. I just did the hard work, and it was hard, and it was not fun sometimes. And facing that fear of being alone and being isolated and having to accept that I was going to be alone was really powerful, because facing that fear and saying, okay, I'm going to do it anyways, was like a V for Vendetta moment. Like it's, you want to break yourself out of the matrix? Become brave enough to face being alone. It will completely and radically change how you see the world and how you see yourself and what you prioritize and what you think is good and bad. You can be alone and you can be okay. And then seeing that you'll probably never actually be alone. Like, I was alone, but I wasn't alone. I wasn't completely isolated. And that fear that I had that I was going to be like literally out in the desert all on my own and never, it doesn't happen. We don't live in a world like that. And you can start to connect with the till person, at the checkout person, and the people you interact with on a daily basis who are taking care of you in certain ways all the time. And you can start to see it like that. And then grieving the loss of the life that you wanted. Grieving the loss of the life you thought you were going to have if you became the perfect person. And letting yourself let that go. Because that's a big deal, and that is really hard and can be very scary, but also incredibly liberating. So, and like I say, it's just not easy. And that's why I put out a video like this every single week. And I have the mystery school, and I have all of these tools, because there are so many things we can do to develop this self-love, but it's a practice. We have to do it every day. It's not something you do and then it's a thing you build, and it's a thing that builds over time. And there's lots of different tools and lots of different ways, and like therapy and all of these things are part of that. And connecting with other people is sometimes part of that. But if that's not available to you, I want you to understand that that's not the only thing available. You can learn to like yourself. You can learn to love yourself. You can learn to validate yourself even when other people don't validate you. You can learn to be okay with being alone sometimes when other people aren't available. You can do it. I know that you can. It is hard and it is scary, but you can do it. Okay? So that was my journey. That is my journey. I'm still on that journey. That if someone like me can learn to like themselves, I truly believe it is possible for anybody else. Because I was raised to believe that absolutely everything about me was wrong or bad. So what if you started to just give yourself the benefit of the doubt? What if you started to just say, I'm going to start this process of learning how to be on my own side? And understanding it's going to be hard and uncomfortable. And that just doing it anyways. And then, right, go to my YouTube channel, go to my mystery school if you need tools, go listen to all my videos, everything that I'm saying is this. There's no wrong way to start. There's no right way to start. There's no one tool that's the right tool. Any tool that you try that I've put out will work. So you can't do it wrong. Okay, I hope we can form a tribe one day, but until then, maybe we can learn to love and embrace the loneliness. Exactly. And the more of us who do that, the more of us become uncompromising in the way that we live, we're going to find a better way of life, because there's going to be more of us saying, like, look, I'm not going to participate in that shitty system. I'm not going to do that shitty thing. I can see that, yes, it would get me love and approval, but it's not good in terms of like actual reality. And I think that's a huge another thing. Like, people ask me, how did I figure out how to align my life? Well, I stopped trying to fit in, and I started trying to figure out what actually worked. Because what gets people to fit in isn't working for us as a humanity, as a species. We're extincting ourselves trying to fit in. So you want to be a radical revolutionary, learn to start feeling what you actually feel and doing the things that actually feel good, and noticing the things that really don't actually feel good but that get you love and approval. And then you'll start to become clear pretty quickly. What are the things that are actually helpful and what are the things that are actually harmful? And what can you do to be a part of the solution? It'll feel good to you. Okay? So that's that. You can do it. Don't wait for anyone to give you permission. It's just hard. It's hard for all of us. And we're in it together. We're doing it together. That's why we have this community. That's why we have the mystery school. That's why all of these things. But you can develop self-love. And you can love yourself. And sometimes being rejected means, okay, I have this new space to learn a little bit more about myself, to learn to be on my own side, to maybe look at some of my patterns and see where they might be coming from pain. But never from self-blame or shame or ridicule. Always just from, I want to be the healthiest version of myself for myself and for my relationships. And we move from there. And it's never going to be as scary as you think it's going to be to face the loneliness, I promise. Okay? You can do it. And then it will lead to a liberation. Okay, that's all. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week.